Wanted to touch on a story I haven't really touched on in a little while. There hasn't been a lot of very specific news until today. Bundeswehr plans armament procurement of more than 350 billion euros. This is dated today from Lars Hoffman. Hardpunked. After the suspension of the debt brake for the defense sector and the announcement by Chancellor Friedrich Merz that the Bundeswehr would become the strongest conventional armed force in Europe, the planners in the BMVG have presented the corresponding armament data. We'll get into that specific data here in just a moment. We have Germany proclaiming that they are going to be the strongest armed force in Europe. They are also in the midst of trying to decide whether they should institute compulsory military service. The Poles have already done this, and a number of other European countries are wondering if they're going to do the same thing. The reason I bring up the German one specifically is because they themselves cite, after suspension of the debt brake for the defense sector. What is that? That comes from what I did a video on March 7th, the day after it broke, and what I consider to be one of the most consequential documents to come out of the European Union, possibly ever. European Council Conclusions on European Defense, 6 March 2025. And it's in this document that this suspension of a debt brake is put in. Specifically, in this area. The subclauses of Section 3B calls on the Commission to propose additional funding sources for defense at EU level, including by means of additional possibilities and incentives offered to all member states, on the basis of principles of objectivity, non-discrimination, and equal treatment of member states. In the use of their current allocations under the relevant EU funding programs, and to swiftly present relevant proposals. Takes note of intention of the Commission to put forward a proposal for a new EU instrument to provide member states with loans backed by EU budget of up to euros 150 billion, and invites the Council to examine the proposal as a matter of urgency. The most relevant portion welcomes the recent letter by President of the European Investment Bank Group and plans therein to step up its support for Europe's security and defense industry while safeguarding its operations and financial capability, and calls on the Board of Governors of the European Investment Bank to urgently continue to adopt the EIB's practices for lending to the defense industry, notably by reevaluating the list of excluded activities and by increasing the volume of available funding in the field of security and defense. And the EU banking decision, EIB's bank decision, was to allow member states to lend from the European Central Bank above their budget projections, so they can lend into deficit in order to fund militaries. That's what they've decided. That's what we've been doing. And that's what they're doing. So this was the creation, in my opinion, of the groundwork for the EU army. And I think eventually this German rearmament, along with French, Italian, Polish, will lead to a joint EU army. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think it's inevitable at this point. And I think that the March 6th memorandum, what I consider to be one of the most consequential documents the European Union has ever put forward, I think this is the basis for it. I think that's the basis for it. So let's get to some of the specifics that the Bundeswehr is going to be doing. They go through some of their procurement over years. The largest items in commitment appropriations include telecommunications equipment, 15.9 billion euros, vehicles and accessories, 20.8 billion euros, combat vehicles, 52.5 billion euros, ammunition, 70.3 billion euros, Field equipment and quartermaster's equipment, 20.9 billion euros. Ships, boats, and naval equipment, 36.6 billion euros. Aircraft and missiles, 34.2 billion euros. Satellite-based communications of the Bundeswehr, 13.3 billion euros. The most extensive commitment appropriations are planned for 2029 and 2030, in which more than 52 billion euros are to be distributed in each case. Dispersed in each case. So those are the individual procurement destinations for that money. And this is just Germany. This is just Germany. We've had recent stories that the French are planning intermediate to long-range ballistic strike missiles, non-nuclear. We've heard of Poland and their plans for conscription. Germany having their plans for conscription. It has to be passed by their parliament. And the EU moving essentially towards the birth of what will be logistically and security-wise an EU army. Well, this is something I wanted to cover. I've been covering it for a while. I've been calling on it because I think it's inevitable. I think Russia's invasion of Ukraine did not ensure Ukraine is going to end up in NATO. What it ensured is that an EU army will be born to encompass Ukraine. Because there's no way the United States is going to allow Ukraine in NATO. It's just not going to happen. Putin has already said that he's willing to allow the remnants of Ukraine into the European Union. Well, there's your catch-22. There's your catch-22. Because based on documents the Europeans have already put out, it's very possible for there to be a European army with one centralized leadership, one centralized industrial base, multiple countries basically acting like states of a mega superstate. And that could possibly include Ukraine. So I wanted to bring this story to you. 350 billion euros is a lot of money. And you have a commitment by Chancellor Friedrich Merz that Germany is going to be the largest and most heavily armed conventional force in Europe. Well, if that's the case, you got to pay for it. And they found the means to do so. And this is just the start. If you liked the video, hit the like. Hopefully you'll subscribe, share with a friend, let them know that another step has been taken. On the back of the most consequential document to come out of the European Union to date, the Germans, citing the very debt break in this document, plan $350 billion euro expansion of their military and possible conscription. Thank you. I appreciate you.